Okay, 8, the eighth day, the infinite number 8, 8 of Cheshvan, or the number of infinity. Mitzvah, the word mitzvah. It says in English, it's an idiom for tzavta. In my humble opinion, it's not a great translation. The word is lashon. It's another word for meaning if you take the same letters, mitzvah, right, and look at them from a slightly different angle, you get tzav, the tzaddik and the beis, which is to connect. Tzav means to command, and tzavta, same letters, roots, means to connect. So mitzvahs are essentially joining, attaching what to what. Whoever performs a mitzvah becomes joined to the essence of God. Now, these are big words. Not only to the emanations of God, to the creative force of God, let's say that's an emanation of God, but to God's essence. Mitzvahs come from way deep. They're deep in the will of God before his wisdom, deeper than his wisdom. Just like in our sense, we have a natural built-in will for things, and then we use our mind to figure out how to do it. So will is deeper than Chachma, and will itself is not essence of who I am. It's just something that I have. It's an attribute that I have, my will. So connecting gets deep into the very essence of Hashem. That's what we do every time we do a mitzvah. Joined to the essence of God, may he be blessed, who issues that particular command. Right? The mitzvah is savta, tzav, command. Tzav, command, mitzvah, commandment, from Lashon, connect with me. This is the meaning of, quote, the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. In other words, he becoming attached to the essence of the Ein Sof who ordained and command, that itself is the reward. What reward could be greater than that? So the above can be understood through an analogy from the physical world. Now, you're going to give an example of a Talmid Chacham, who is a very big intellect, and a student who's never learned the subject matter before, and who's young, and who's, number one, hasn't yet been exposed to the subject matter, and his mind isn't so developed. So an extremely simple person, who's called this young student, has an inner sense of bittul or awe in front of the great professor, in front of the Talmid Chacham. I was sitting last night in the shir. I just happened to, I had to daven from the Omer to my father's yortzeit yesterday, so I sat for a shir. And in about 5 minutes into the shir, I was just blown away by the command that this person had of all the meforshim, explainers of the Torah. And I really felt this sense of just openness, just listen to him. So this is someone you could listen to, someone you could learn from, right? So in an unlearned Talmud, like as I was at that moment, I felt this inner sense of bittul before the sage, or this, in this case, the greatness of the scholar. So this bittul, in which the person senses himself to be an utter non-entity, right? I'm just blown away by his what's the word in English? Sagacity, I guess I'd pronounce it. Sagacity. So the sage, in turn, does not sense or perceive the simpleton. Now, this is another word I really don't like the way it's translated. Simpleton is something usually in a disparaging way. He's a simpleton. The word in Hebrew is an ish pashat. The Chacham doesn't perceive the simplicity, the openness, the lack of knowledge until they start developing relationship. So he doesn't sense or perceive the simple person as belonging at all to the category of human beings. Now, this is a kind of outrageous thing to say, but they have no relationship yet. They have no platform yet that has brought them together. This is a child, so to speak, and this is an adult, and they live in two different worlds. Let's take it that way. So no, not that the scholar dismisses or rejects him, God forbid, no, but that would be an evil trait. He simply sees no connection. They have no connection or relationship whatsoever to each other. on the level of intellect. This is a student-teacher relationship, a great professor to a neophyte to the field. There's not yet any relationship. Now, when the sage instructs a simple man to do something for him, that command brings the simpleton into being. And here I would rather, I mean, this is the Friedrich Rebbe speaking, so I can criticize it, but it works better for me to think of a Rebbe and a Chassid. If you say, if the Rebbe were to ask you to do something, then your bittul, your nullification would be totally there, of course. I mean, there's no question, right? So we'll stick with his words, though. When the sage instructs a simple man to do something for him, that command brings the simpleton into being. All of a sudden, the Rebbe needs me. The scholar, the great one, the CEO of the company needs me. Actually happened to me in one job. I was working at Goldman Sachs in the information technology area. We had a situation there that was affecting the whole company, and the CEO of the company invited me and a couple other people to come to the boardroom to explain to them what happened. Whoa, all of a sudden, I'm in the boardroom of Goldman Sachs, right? All of a sudden, I'm a somebody in the eyes of the CEO who never heard of me before that. So whatever relationship example works for you, all of a sudden, you're a somebody. One has assumed a status unto himself and that he is able to carry out an order of the sage or of the Rebbe or of the CEO. And it is him that the sage addresses and instructs. So in the eyes of the sage too, now this simple person, this low person that he never thought about before is a somebody to whom he, the sage, can speak and instruct. They have a relationship. So what is more, the command that the sage, the Rebbe, the CEO gives, actually it's that commandment, come into the boardroom and explain this to us, which actually unites the lofty, exalted sage with the gross simpleton. So the analog is obvious. It is understood in the analogy that there's no difference at all what the command is about. Whatever Hashem is commanding you, whether a great or lofty, doesn't matter. Whether it be a lofty matter or a trivial one. That's mitzvahs for you. Okay. Back to our story. Lessons in Tanya. I'm going to start from yesterday, 8 and 9. 8 was very short, and we started anyway into 9. Excuse me, 7 was very short, and today is 8. So we'll just flow from 7 to 8. And 7 started on page 139 in Lessons in Tanya.
I just want to say that this kind of makes me upset a little bit, like that I learned all the reasons behind all the mitzvahs, like, oh, the lulav is that, and the esrog represents that, and who cares?
Well, ultimately, you're right. The ma'aseh hu ha'ikar, the deed is the ikar. But with the kavanas, you do the mitzvahs with more gusto. He doesn't add that, right? There's a difference between the servant doing time, bring me this golden plate. There's a difference between the servant just doing it, which that establishes a relationship, and the servant doing it with gusto and with, oh, thank you. So, the kavanas add a geschmack to the mitzvah that I'm sure the metzaveh, the one who commands it, appreciates.
Like, I guess the servant understands what he needs the gold plate for. He understands the whole workings behind,
Yeah, the more of himself he can therefore invest in it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, page Kuf Mem Daled. What that which the Arizal says. Okay, we're discussing here the topic of godliness invested in klippas, right? Klippas noigas, gimel klippas atameya. This portion of this letter, which is couched in very Kabbalistic terms, is really an extension of the whole question and answer that we gave about how godliness can be in Gullus Shechina, to the extent that it can be invested in the most evil of things in the world. So there is a Seder, the allness and oneness and beauty and Kedusha, which is the origin, goes through a covering phase. And as I said in a previous conversation, and that covering is not wholly negative. It allows us to take the light, like a sunglass can take the light, but it does cover. And when it covers over, the sense of godliness eventually becomes lost as this light, which originates in the way we're speaking it today in Atzilus, drips on down. And it drips on down through the process of what's called Birur Hilchasa, the clarification of the halacha, from the Torah Shebekasab, which is the white light. We don't know anything about what to do, down through starting now with the Mishnah. So he starts with the Mishnah. Shemishnayos heim b'malchus the Yetzirah. The Malchus, Mishnayos, is godly light, godly wisdom, as it drips down into Malchus of Yetzirah, from Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, which means to say, not Malchus itself of Atzilus, not Atzilus itself, but Levush Malchus, the garment of Malchus of Yetzirah. So Malchus of Atzilus, which in this particular place in Tanya we'll use that. That's the origin. I mean, they're deeper than this, but Malchus is the origin of the oral Torah. Malchus is the origin of the written Torah. Also, Malchus is the mouth. Remember, Malchus is peh. Malchus peh, Torah shebal peh. Malchus is the mouth, and it drips down to the Torah shebal peh, which is the oral Torah, literally the Torah from the mouth, Torah shebal peh. And the way it comes down, it becomes dressed up. It's the same light, but it's a light which is dressed up to become the garment of Malchus of Yetzirah, the lower world. Shenislab shaboy Malchus Atzilus. And as I said, in that dress up in the lower world is the core, the body, which is Malchus of Atzilus. And then Malchus of Yetzirah Nikra Shivka. And in the language of Kabbalah, the language of the Exile particularly, Malchus of Yetzirah, that lower manifestation of Malchus, which Malchus is the queen, the feminine, is called a handmaid. Legabe Malchus Atzilus, in relation to the higher level of Malchus of Atzilus, who's the queen. Well, Malchus de Bria, there's an intermediary level between Malchus of Atzilus and Malchus of Yetzirah. That's Bria. Malchus of Bria Nikra Ama is called the maid, a higher level in the hierarchy of servants to the queen. But Teda, you should know, Amashikos of Arizal, it's what the Arizal writes, the Mikra, which is scripture, is Torah, the written Torah. Hainu Torah Shebekasab, that's the written Torah. Hu be'asiyah, this comes down all the way to Asiyah. This is another of the many examples of the deeper it's rooted, the lower it comes, right? Saif Ma'aseh b'machshavat techila, we'll use that one. The beginning of thought is last indeed. So the beginning of the Torah is the Torah Shebekasab. And it comes down into Malchus of Atzilus. And it's explained in the Zohar, and in the writings of the Arizal. The Kaimai say Mispar in many places without any number. This Torah Shebekasab is Teferes. Teferes is the Midah of Rachamim, and it's the concentration of Chesed and Gevurah, and then from there, Netzach Hod Yisod. So it's a sort of middle place where all the midos are being mashpia, they're flowing downward into Malchus. So the oral Torah, the written Torah, is a source of flow to the oral Torah. So Tiferes, which is the middle of all that, is called Torah Ksav, the written Torah. It's the source of the flow, which is called Zod Atzilus, the midos of Atzilus. The midos of Atzilus from Chesed to Yesod all flow down into Malchus. Ella, however, Shemislabesh is Be'asiyah. Those midos of Malchus those midos of Atzilus flow first into Malchus of Atzilus, and then through the various so-called dressings, Islabshus, down into this world of Asiyah. Now, as we bring our Yom to mind here, it's the lowest of the low, right? But it's the final destination, because Soif Masa, the beginning of God's thought, is down here below, or the beginning from Sefer Yetzirah, the beginning is wedged in the end. God's will, if the Torah is his Chokhmah, and the Midos are the flow of the Chokhmah down to Malchus, higher than Chokhmah and deeper than Chokhmah, as in our own selves, is will, a deeper level of consciousness. So the highest of the high is expressed in Torah Shebetzav, the written Torah, but you don't really know how that will is meant to be manifest until you have first brought into writing and then brought into explanation, until finally down here below you understand this is the mitzvah, mitzvah, you're connected with the original will of the commander. And this is what the Arizal says, and so it is explicitly the Sefer HaKavanis, also the Arizal, Shemikra u'Mishnah b'Talmud, each of these things, Mikra, the written Torah, and then the next step down, the Mishnah, and the Talmud, the Gemara, the Kabbalah, and Kabbalah, kulam be'atzilus, all of them are in Atzilus. They're just dressed up differently, right? But they're all in Atzilus. But Mikra, written Torah, goes down into physical luchos, down into the world of Asiya. Mishnah doesn't go down so far. It goes down to Yetzirah. And Talmud b'Bria, the Talmud is in Bria. Okay. The point is that godliness gets enclosed, and out now in the next phase that we're going to do today, and ultimately gets so enclosed that it becomes indistinguishable as godliness, and what becomes more apparent is the klippa, which is covering it, or the dressing, the hislapshus that is invested in as it gets down and down and down into lower worlds. So this is today. When Malchus of Atzilus, right, that first diffusion of God's will, gets enclosed in Klippas Noiga, the light klippas on the way down, the purpose of which is, of that enclosement in the klippas, is to purify, rectify, straighten out those shells. These shells are sparks of godly energy, shenofel bechet adam harishon, which fell through the sin of the original human. V'gam harapak netzoitzois, and also the 288 sparks. These are also fell down. These are 288 godly energetics, sparks of God, so to speak. Shenoflu b'firus hakelim, which fell through the process of the breaking of the vessels. One of the simple ways just to explain, Bereshis, the very first word of the Chumash, one of the esoteric reasons why the Chumash doesn't begin with an aleph, if it's a beginning, why not begin with an aleph, is because this Chumash is describing mainly the second process. There was a first process, which is alluded to in one sentence in Bereshis, that the earth was in a state of sohu v'bohu. Sohu v'bohu, confusion, randomness, scatteredness, brokenness, right, came from a world which preceded this, the world of Tohu, when the lights were huge and the vessels were small, and therefore the vessels couldn't contain the light, and they cracked, and they brought down with them sparks. The light, and we spoke yesterday about a spark, versus some kind of other. A spark isn't just something covering over something. It's something which is actually carrying the light of the flame, of the fire, but it's at a distance. So in the sparks, the flame of the fire, let's say the campfire, we'll make that an analogy for godliness at its root, at its origin, the original bright light. And the pieces of wood which are sparking up, the wood part of it are the kalim, and the kalim spark off, but they bring light with them, right? The sparks are flying all over. They're pieces of wood with light in them. And that light falls down, the sparks fall down. That's the metaphor for that huge, huge light of the world of Tohu falling down, down, down into this world, which needs to rectify. That's why this world is called Olam HaTikun, because the broken light has fallen down through what's called the breakingness of the vessels. So then, when that happens, Gam HaMalchus of Atzilus, then even Malchus of Atzilus, Nikra B'Shem Etza Das Toivera. It's no longer the tree of life because the life force in it is being totally disguised and covered over by the Klippa. And the Klippa is creating a world of confusion, brings the world of confusion down to here where the rectification needs to take place. So that's called, when that happens, what happens is that the dominion of godliness is not in the tree of life. The dominion of godliness is expressed in the tree of good and evil. Lagabez Zodat Silis, in relation to the pure energy that was up in the higher world, Sheinu Yored, which didn't come down shum there, Menikra Eitzachayim, that pure light, which is up there in its purity. Now, remember what he said earlier, the light of Atzilus is here, but it's presented in a way which is not pure. It's covered over by the klippas, not the way it is up above in the world of Atzilus, where you can see the light and there's no question about what's holy, and that's called the Eitzachayim. Somebody's hand is up. Question. Yeah. It just says.
So it seems to me that there's still tohu vavohu.
Yeah, that is the world on. Yeah, the world as presented is a world of tohu vavohu. That's the world of the flood, the world of Noah. All right, the world is tohu vavohu. It's the flood casts everything up and down, and everything goes. Imagine, what happened. Ever seen a basement flooded? I have, unfortunately, during a flood. Everything is all over the place. Then comes on the scene, as we'll talk about tonight, Avram Avinu to fix it all up. So this is the world that needs fixing. Yes, that's why we call it the world of Tikkun, the world that needs fixing. And the Torah, and it comes in stages, which we'll speak about more tonight. The first stage is Avram Avinu, but there's many years before the Matan Torah, between Avram Avinu and Matan Torah. Matan Torah is the next stage, and this is all, it's called the 2,000 years of Tikkun. Begin with Avram Avinu. It's a world that needs rectification. You're absolutely right. V'hine, going further, Hislabshis Hamalchus B'klippas Noiga, this enclothement of Malchus in these light klippas, we're dealing here with the klippas that can be rectified through our engagement with them, Husoid Galus Shechina. That is the secret of the Galus of Shechina. If somebody asks you, what do you mean, exile of Shechina? It's the enclothement of Malchus of Atzilus, the highest level of godly, in the klippas, in the dross, the wood, the sparked off wood. That's called Galus of Shechina. Asher Sholet HaAdam Ba'Adam, which the Pasuk says in Kehelis, where one man rules over another for the evil. And there's two explanations that I'm aware of about the evil. One, that's the next words in the pasuk, "Sholta odom l'ra'aloi," for evil to him. So, on the one hand, it presents an evil to us, right? We're in trouble down here. We have to dig our way, see our way, escape the gullus. We have to fix the world, right? And it's a tough nut. Someone who's not muted, please mute yourself. I think there's Rosa. Please mute yourself till the next time. So that's one way. It's a ra to us. But another way, a deeper way of looking at it, which Hasidus does, it's for the detriment of the klippa. The klippa is going to get destroyed. So the odom of klippa, the person of klippa, the shell itself is going to get destroyed. And that's going to be for of course, the improvement of the person. So in any case, the klippa is ruling. Sholet in a person, it dominates in a person, and that's called Galus HaShechina, exile of Shechina. Dahainu, Bisman Galus HaShechina, that in the time of the exile of the Shechina, Shemishpoes Lechitzoinium, when the flow of godliness goes to the externals, to the outside, the chutz, that's why it's called sometimes the Sitra Achar, not the side of Kedusha, but to that other side, Shehem Klippas Noiga, which are the light klippas, She'erev Rav Yoinkim Misham, which the simple people suck from, Today's analog would be they stay on the internet all day and night, or in a previous generation, they watch television day and night. They listen to the news day and night, and they get literally sucked in, yankin, that's the word. They get sucked in to the clipper view of reality. And yet it's from the average bloke, this is not an insult, this is the way the average bloke goes to work, comes home, has dinner, watches TV, spends some time reading, who knows what, relaxes. And from the average person, factories were made, at least in the past, industry was motivated by the average person, the average laborer, and still to a great extent is it. And so the scholars, the holy scholars, and even in this world, the secular scholars who are not doing labor, they live from the produce from the production of the Amihaoretz, from the simple people. And from them, Nizunin Talmid Chachamim are sustained, the Talmid Chachamim, Begalus, in Galus. The Oz, I'm thinking about the Rebbe who was once asked, about why he doesn't move all the Hasidim to the Holy Land, now that there's a state of Israel. And he said that he was a Navy person. Most of you probably know. He worked in the engineering office of the Navy over here in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And he said, in the Navy, the captain is the last one to leave the ship. So the sinking ship is the Gullus. And the Rebbe was here in the Gullus, right? And being sustained by the food and produce and everything else like every one of us. The Oz, Ikar Avodas HaOdam, and then the main work of a person in the Gullus, the Ikar Esek HaTorah, or mitzvahs, and the main occupation and the raison d'etre for being occupied in Torah and mitzvahs, Hulavara HaNetzotzos, is to rectify the sparks. Rosa, back to your question. It is a world of confusion. It is a world of darkness. And the main avoida of Torah and mitzvahs is to rectify that. This is known to have Rizal from the Rizal. And therefore, Ikar Inyan Halimud, in the time of the 2,000 years of Tikkun, we are now in a different state. Just to put it out there, I'll probably mention again tonight, there are three shlavim, three levels of time, when it's stacked on top of each other. From 0 to 2,000 is called the time of Tohu V'Bohu, 0 to 2,000, right? Avram was born in 1948, 1948 before the creation. He ushers in the 2000, the beginning of the year 2000. And there, from 2000 to 4000, is 2,000 years of tikkun, 2,000 years of rectification. And then from there, which roughly corresponds to the closing of the Mishnah and the revelation of the Zohar, and through now is called Ikvasa de Mashiach, the footsteps and the ultimate coming of Mashiach. But in the second time, the rectification, the birurim, is coming through getting straight. What does God want? We have it now. We have Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. You can look it up. You don't need to busy yourself in all the ins and outs of the Gemara. But at that time, it didn't exist until relatively recent times. So in that time, the main work was Ian Upilpul Halacha, concentration and back and forth argumentation to clarify, to mavara, bira, to the mavara, what's the halacha, the isra heter, what's forbidden and what's permissible, tuma and tara, what's not pure and what's impure and pure, levada hamuta v'hatorah, to clarify what's permissible, what's pure, meha from that which is tied down and that which is tameh, al yedei inyan pilpul halacha, through back and forth argumentation to clarify the halacha. The chokhmah bina b'das, using the faculties given to all of us and to these chachamim of the Mishnah, and then the Gemara, and then the later poskim, and ultimately through the writings of the Shulchan Aruch and the various versions of the Shulchan Aruch through their Chochmah, Bina, and Das. As is known, the Torah, the Zohar tells us that the Torah is drawn from God's wisdom. Now, God's wisdom is the Yud of the Shem Havaya. It's just the point. It needs elaboration. It needs to be extracted and broadened into Bina. And then that needs to become internalized in Das. So the Raisa, the articulation of the written Torah is drawn from God's wisdom, and it's through our applying, and particularly the Chachamim and the Tanoim and the Amoraim of the Mishnah and the Gemara, applying the Chachma, behind the Chachma Elah, which is the Chachma of Atzilus, to apply their Chachma, which reaches into Chachma of Atzilus, Hamalubeshis b'malchus of Atzilus, which is the side of the Torah Shebal Peh. This is recapitulating what we said before. Malchus of Atzilus is the fundamental point of the oral Torah. B'soid Abi Yisoid Brata. And the Zohar also says that the fundament of the father, in the foundation of the father, is the foundation of the daughter. The daughter is Malchus, from Torah Shebal Peh, right? From Chochmah, right? Chochmah is the father, and Chochmah is an opening up a channel, right, into the ayin, and then it goes down, 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 and down, and another channel is opened up, which is the channel from thought to speech, the mouth, which is Malchus Peh, right? We had earlier Malchus Peh. Malchus is the mouth. That's the oral Torah. Amalubeshis from Malchus to Yitzira, and as he's just recapitulating what we said before, and that goes down to Malchus of Yitzira, and then the Sod of the Mishnayos and the Baraisis, Amalubeshis Beklippus Noiga, which get, as it comes down, wrapped up in the Klippus Noiga, Shekeneged Oilam HaYitzira, down to the lower world of Yitzira, Sheshom Maschil Bechinas Das, which that's where Das begins, Chochmah Bina Das, roughly corresponds to the three worlds of Atzilus, Bria, and Yetzirah. And that begins to come down and gets further closed in more Noga. And then the Baraisis, which come, the Baraisis are teachings that are used to clarify the Mishnah. They come from, the Mishnah was learned in formal academies. The Baraisis come from outside the academies, from the Chachamim who are not in the institution, but the knowledge from outside, from the fields, from the outside was brought into the academies to clarify. These are the Baraisis, Hamalubeshis Beklippus Noiga, which are also covered in Klippus Noiga because it's a lower manifestation, which are connected to Olam Asiya, where the most Klippa is down here in the world of Asiya. And at the lowest level, at the upper levels, Noiga is mainly more positive than negative, meaning covering in order to allow us to see. But as it gets thicker and thicker, it begins to obscure. And that's ultimately gives us the perspective of the opposite of Kedusha. We don't see Kedusha at all, which is the Ra, the evil part of Noga. So it's now kind of three things. You have Klippus Noiga, Gimel Klippus of Tameas, and the interface. There's an interface in Klippus Noiga which interfaces to the dark side, right? So there's in every structure there's a big head, middle, and end. So the head is Klippus Noiga, the end is Gimel Klippus of Tameas, and then there's a part of Klippus Noiga which begins to be the evil part of Noiga. Kanoidim Arizal, as is known from the Arizal. And that is the end of today's Tanya. The quick summation is to know, back to our Hayom Yom, that mitzvahs, although they're the bottom point, that's where God settles, right? He has his dwelling place, he wants his dwelling place down here below in the lowest world. Down here in the lowest world is the most confusion. So it needs rectification. That's why it's called the Olam HaTikun. And after the rectification, then the light can shine. And we are in that time when the light can shine, when the klippas can individually and collectively, only through our willpower, it's available to us to just knock them over, tear them aside, and the light will shine through our performance of Torah and mitzvahs in the time that we're living in now.
What you said about a covering that helps you see.
Yeah.
We all have a covering that covers the light and you can't see, but it's true because if the light is too bright,
right,
you're completely blinded. But if you cover it a little, then the light is
right.
It helps you see.
That's the toiv shebaklipa. That's the good of the klippa, right? But it starts a process, right?
So what's an example of a covering that covers the bright light so that you can see?
Sunglasses.
No, I know, but like in Torah mitzvahs.
I'm not clear your question.
Well, we're
how would you? Can you rephrase it? You mean you want a mitzvah that reveals?
not necessarily a mitzvah, but avodas Hashem, where the way the world works, klipas noga is a covering that helps you see. So
okay.
how would you practicalize it?
Okay, okay, fine. Got it. You need food to eat to live, right? Yeah. The food. What is this food? Well, I have a piece of ginger biscotti next to me, right? Ginger, a spice. When I pick it up, I don't see any godly energy, right? But it must have something in it because when I eat it, it's going to give me something, right? Now, I can eat it in one of two ways. I can eat it, I know there's energy in it, and I can eat it in the way of just, well, that energy makes me feel good. I love the taste, right? And that leads to gluttony and further captivity in the klippa, which is just the raw physical substance. If I eat it with a kavanah, that I'm going to serve God with it, I'm going to learn with it, etc. So then I'm revealing to myself something about that energy which I didn't know in the first place. That this contains this piece of ginger, this little speck of ginger, or I'll hold up this little piece of cake, which is made from this. Looks like, well, this one is very appropriate because it's brown and even looks like dirt. Yeah? But in that dirt is a huge power. And if I take that into me in the right way, that power is revealed. So I've taken the klippa, and instead of it being a blindness, I've used it in a way that's a revelation. I don't know if that's the best example, but it works for me.
Yeah, food. Food is a good example.
Food is a good example, right? Yeah. Food is an excellent example. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Add something to, I think it's Elisheva speaking.
That would
Yeah?
be Elisheva. Yeah,
yes, I don't know what happened to my Zoom. It doesn't want to say my name anymore. I don't know.
I see it. Elisheva Kirshim.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Just
go ahead. Sarah, go ahead.
She was asking the question, what would be an example of a mitzvah that covers so that we can see? And my initial reaction to that was, all mitzvahs do that. Every mitzvah almost is enclosed in some either physical or another type of venue of action, of place, of space. Those coverings actually enclose the godliness that's inherent in the participation of the mitzvah. But how the mitzvah is enclosed is a good clothing to enable us to extract or pull out the godliness.
Right, but Elisheva was asking, where do we have same a mitzvah where you can actually see the godliness, where the godliness becomes exposed? So we used one.
Only when you do.
I mean, there are all of them. Yeah, I mean, let's go back to Sukkot, right? The esrog, right? When you look at an esrog, do you see godliness? No. But this is a more refined kind of way of thinking about the revelation. If you hold that esrog and hold with it the intentionality and the kavanas and that smell, right? Smelling is another one, right? Food is a simple one. Very simple. A solid piece of dirt releases energy, which you can use for holiness. But a scent can get you into a place, right? That's the purpose of the incense. And there's an example. The inorganic incense and the organic incenses that we use in the temple, the frankincense, etc. Of course, they're all encapsulations, as you said, Sarah, correctly. Of course, they're all encapsulations of godliness. But these are ones which allow themselves to reveal the godliness which is in it just by simple usage. So, Ayenka, your hand's up.
Yeah. Two things. One, I was thinking when you talk about, a mitzvah like that, the mitzvahs that don't make any sense to us, then that like even like the avodas and the animal sacrifices,
right?
Like those don't rationally make sense to us.
I know, but those things are not really hukim, because the sacrifice, when you bring a sacrifices, in the expression is when you come up for the shalosh regolim, you come to see and be seen. To be seen, of course, is to present yourself to God. But they saw, when those korbanos were burned on the Mizbeach, they saw a force in the shape of a lion coming down on the Mizbeach. And so they could get it, really get it. One that's a hike, the classic hike, the one that's not understandable, is the Porah Duma, right? It makes pure the one who is the object of it, and it makes impure the one who does it. Now, this is a level of mitzvah where the seeing is a different. Let me get this. Okay, I'll say it in this in my mind. I once a line from the Rabbi Rashav about bina, about understanding. There's an expression to understand something, and a deeper level of understanding is to understand something from within something else. Lahaven bina mitoich, lahaven one bina from within another one, and he explains what it means. There are many ways to explain it. What it means is to understand that there are things which you don't understand, that essentially Hashem himself is beyond understanding. That's why the hukim are so revelatory, but in a very unrevelatory, not al pi seichel. They're the things that you can't understand. And those things that you can't understand are closer to an expression of what God really is than the things that you do understand, because God is ultimately totally beyond understanding. That gives you an opportunity to come on to hashgacha pratis, to real betochen. Betochen is when you see something and it's painful, and you now understand, because you understand that if it's godly, it must be good, even if I don't see the good. But I understand that it's good, and it's from the higher level of good, whereas coming from that which I don't understand. That's sort of an intellectual or mental gymnastic over here, but that gives you an insight beyond sight, insight, looking into sight, so that you go past the seeing and into the betochen, into the faith and the believing.
Okay. But my other question really is, when the Rebbe spoke about that all the sparks had already been elevated, so what does that mean practically? I mean, are they really all, are there every time we eat, we're still elevating, and like what kind of state are we in? Does that make sense?
This has been discussed over and over again, and honestly, I don't, in a certain way, I want to hold back from this, because even the people that know a whole lot more than I have never given me a really packaged answer to this, right? But and if there's someone on board who has a nice packaged answer to this, speak up. I'd love to hear it. In the meantime, today you have an example of this right in front of our eyes. All the news that is exposing how simple Jews, non-observant Jews, have been made acutely aware of their relationship with Hashem, who are crying out. I gave you yesterday the videos of people, non-observant people, koshering their homes to feed kosher food to soldiers. We have been driven through our various exiles and to our rectifying those things, coming to terms with those things, you might say, to a point where we have the ability that no generation has had to the extent that we have to see the essence, to have the essence of things revealed in front of us through the fact that the darkness has become so apparent for what it is that there's no question, really. And today, and I'm not today's news, since the invasion, since the Hamas invasion, more clarity is in front of the non-observant and even the non-Jewish world about what really is true than has ever been before. That, to me, is a huge example of the sparks being rectified. The camouflage of good, the camouflage of good over evil, the camouflage, the shirt, to use our garment, has been stripped away. And we all know what we're supposed to do. Whether we do it or not, he's going to tell us tomorrow, then what's the purpose of learning in this age where all the Birurim have been done? Why are we still learning if the learning was all about Birur Chilchasa to explain, to clarify? Tomorrow he's going to tell us what the purpose is of learning continually in this age after all the Birurim have been done. I don't. That's my take on it. That's a take on it. That godliness is in front and center, right now in this world. And I'm sure all of you have other information and videos that you can share. Well, Menuchas. Did you see Menuchas? What Menucha posted today in the Daily Tanya?
Is that the one with the tefillin?
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yes.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Well,
So
there
it
you
is
go.
making a deer b'taktonim.
But
you go. Yeah.
But it's not. But if the Rebbe said that we finished the sparks, then this is something else. This is opening up. This is using our key to open the box of light that's been in our hands the whole time. It's not elevating the sparks. We have to believe. In other words, I don't have a package deal. I don't know. I haven't been learning this for so long, but I learned to trust that if the Rebbe said it, it's true. That's my simpleton.
Okay, that's a good way of taking it. Okay. Yeah. All right, but I'm saying there are examples of it happening all the time. I mean, the Baal Shuva movement is built on this. That people saw the fallacy of the culture, and they went for God.
So what's happening now that to us looks like elevating the sparks, because the Rebbe said that we finished elevating sparks, and because everything the Rebbe says is true. So maybe what looks to us now like elevating sparks is really opening up the box of light and like letting godliness in. And
yeah, I like that. I like that very much. Absolutely. Opening up the box of light. Because we know that we know the difference between light and darkness. We're not fooled by the clipper. I mean, that's not saying everyone is like this, but this certainly is a wave that's present right now.
Let's hope the wave continues and just brings
Amen. Amen. And washes away all the darkness totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
All right. So let's be part of it until we meet again tomorrow for the next stage. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.